What is going on, world, and welcome to the Zyn Experiments. I've been taking Zyn, or as it's called here in Canada, Zonic, for the last 9 months. I know from the title of the video it says 6 months. I've been taking it for 9 months, but I've been taking breaks in between to see how it's affecting my productivity, my energy levels, my mood, my lifestyle, and if I'm addicted to it at all. So I'd say I've been doing it for about 6 months straight if we didn't count the breaks in between. But it's been about 9 months since I started experimenting with nicotine pouches. So it's actually been about a week since I've had one of these. So we just got a fresh new tin here. We're going to pop this open. We're going to slam an upper Decky, and we're going to get to this video here and describe my experiences of experimenting with nicotine pouches for the last 9 months. So to start off, I'm going to go over my history of nicotine use. If you don't give a fuck about my history of nicotine use, feel free to skip in the chapters of the videos there to the next part of the video. But I think this is important and relevant. And what I'm going to try to do here as well too is while I'm going through this video, I'm not going to try to do too many cuts, and I'm going to let you guys know how I'm feeling and how this thing is affecting me. So this is only 4 milligrams, so it's nothing too crazy. Lately, I've been doing about 2 pouches, and I've been doing several 2 pouch doses per day. And honestly, I think it's amazing. I think it's great. I think it's a huge effect on my productivity, my energy levels, my mood, but there are some negatives that I think to it. So in this video, I want to break down my experiences with it over the last 9 months. And I'm also going to try to take you through as this thing is slowly taking me over and affecting me. And I think since I've given it a good 7 days, I'm going to be able to give you guys a good perspective into it. Like right now, it's been in my lip for like the last 20-30 seconds. It's already starting to tingle a little bit. I already got that minty fresh feeling, and I can already start, it's nothing too crazy right now, but I can already start it having an effect on my body and on my mind. So I'm going to try to describe it as I go throughout this video. But first, let's discuss my history of nicotine use. So I started smoking marijuana or weed back when I was 14 years old. That's kind of when I first started with it and tried it for the first time. Then by the time I was about 16, I was in grade 10 or 11 of high school, I became a regular smoker of weed. And, I tried cigarettes here and there, at a party and stuff, but I never really liked it. It tasted really bad and really gross to me. I started doing chewing tobacco in high school because all the cool guys were doing it. And I remember the first time I took a dip, at least that's what it's called. You put a fat dipper in your lip, and I had it in my lip for about half an hour. And this was after I think I was doing track and field at high school. And we did it after and had a bus ride home. I was just hanging out with these guys after, and I threw up after I had that dip in my mouth. And again, this is why I think this is relevant, because the first time I tried these nicotine pouches about 9 months ago, I had that very same feeling where I felt extremely nauseous, really sick to my stomach, and almost to the point I thought I was going to throw up. But anyways, back to my history of nicotine use. Throughout high school, I would buy tins of tobacco whenever I could, and I would do it. I probably did a bunch of it at the time. Probably, if I were to look back, maybe 20 to 30 tobacco tins or chewing tobacco at the time. And it's very gross and disgusting. You're putting all this stuff in your lips, and then you got to really wash it out after, and you're spitting into a water bottle. And overall, it was a cool experience because you really would get this head high and this body buzz off of it. But I didn't really enjoy it. I was kind of doing it because it was the cool thing to do, and all the cool guys at school were obviously doing it. So I felt cool to do it, but I didn't really enjoy it. It was cool and fun to do it, but not really enjoyable. Then I took a serious break from nicotine. And then when I got into college, all throughout this period of time, I was still smoking marijuana regularly. And I got into college, and one of my roommates that when I first moved in there introduced me to poppers. If you guys don't know what poppers are, essentially it's where you line the bottom of a bowl with tobacco, from a cigarette, and then you put weed on top. Or if you actually have this special little tool, It's just like a bowl, but it's like it just looks like the end of a pin basically, but it's steel. And you put the cigarette in, you cut it. So you're probably taking like this much of a cigarette, and then you're packing the rest with weed. And then what you do is you smoke, and then you take it really fast, and then you hold it in as long as you can, and you blow it out. And I remember the first time I did that, sitting on the couch with my roommate, and I just sunk back in the chair. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing feeling in the world. Right now, I'm going to cut to a little bit of how this is feeling, because right now I'm feeling like lightheaded. I'm feeling euphoric off this pouch that I just put in. I feel really good right now. And it's making me feel a little more lively and talkative. To be honest, right before I was about to do this video, I didn't want to do it. I just hit a new PR at the gym, 350-pound squats. If you're interested, go check it out on Instagram. But I just smashed like 2 large burritos, and I was like, I wanted to film this video, but don't really want to film it. And I had to like get the motivation up to actually film right now. And now that I have this in, I feel like a lot more talkative, a lot more lively. But anyways, back to my history of nicotine use again. So I, throughout college, was doing poppers regularly. Like, I would wake up in the morning, do a popper, go to class, come home for a break in between, do poppers, and all throughout the day, essentially smoking cigarettes mixed with marijuana, which is essentially what it was. So I was in college to become a resource drilling and blasting technician. It was a 2-year program, and most of the jobs that you would need did drug testing. And I was very concerned about this, and I really wanted to apply for this mining position, which I eventually got. So 6 months before, I stopped all weed and everything. And so I probably did poppers regularly for about 1.5 years. Then I completely stopped. Then I worked in this underground gold mine in Northern Ontario, Canada for probably about 6 months, until I saw that after the first drug test that they initially did to see if you could even apply for the program and get the job, they weren't drug testing at all. So I probably had a good gap of about a year where I wasn't doing poppers anymore. And then I started doing poppers again. I started smoking weed a little bit when I would come back. Essentially, when I was working in this underground gold mine, we'd work for 28 days straight, 2 weeks of day shift and 2 weeks of night shift. And then you'd have 2 weeks off. So when I came home, I would be smoking weed and doing poppers, and then I'd stop when I would go back up to the mine. And that's what I did for probably about 6 months to a year or so, until I was like, I'm being ridiculous. This is silly. I know that cigarettes are bad for you. I just got to stop this. So since then, I was probably about 21 years old. I haven't really done nicotine at all. And now I'm 34 years old. I'm turning 35 in April, and I just started back on these, or started taking nicotine again, for the last 9 months. And as I mentioned there, the first time I put one of these in, I got the very same experience that I did when I first put chewing tobacco in. I felt nauseous. I felt sick to my stomach after about like the first half an hour. I first put it in, and I got that euphoric feeling of when I first took the popper. I was like, oh my God, this is almost overwhelming. Like, it's a very big head high. It's a very big body buzz, and it really took over my body. And I remember I was sitting here on my computer trying to do some work. I bought 2 tins, and I was like, let's see what this is all about. I'm seeing, the full send guys are talking about Zyns and, hitting upper Deckies, and even Tucker Carlson was talking about it and utilizing it. So I was like, man, I got to experiment with this. I got to try this out, because I think there's something here. And a lot of what I've seen in the past is that a lot of famous writers and authors would smoke cigarettes to help with creativity. And my job, my business, I have a social media agency. I'm working essentially on the computer almost all day long if I'm not out shooting content with my clients. So it's very creative work. And this year, I want to stop weed in general. I just wanted to get off of it. I wanted to see if I could go all 2025 without it. So far, it's been about 2.5 months without weed, besides having some crazy vivid dreams, which I'll discuss in another video. In general, I'm really not having a problem with it at all. So we're going to get to this in a little bit about addiction and being addicted to things. And maybe it's just not in my nature, in my genes, to get addicted to stuff. But essentially I just stopped weed like it was no problem. And then I was like, all right, let's try Zonics and Zyns and see what this is like. So the first time I did it, as I mentioned there, I got a very big head high. I was like, oh my gosh, this is almost overwhelming. I had to stop doing my work and just like sit back and watch something and relax. And then after about 20 minutes, I was like, oh my God, I'm kind of feeling nauseous. And I had to go to the bathroom and I thought I was going to throw up. Like I really thought I was going to be sick, but I didn't. So that was my experience first getting on it. And even though I had that kind of negative experience, I'd say, I still wanted to test it out and experiment with it. I am the Hungarian experiment after all, and I like to really test things and experiment on how it affects me and my body and my mind and my mood. So I kept pushing it. And as I mentioned there, I've been doing it for about 9 months now. I bought 2 tins. And right now, as you can see here, this is mint 4 milligrams. And before Canada like banned it and then allowed it to come back, they had a whole bunch of different flavors that you could get. They had like berry and citrus. So I got berry and mint. And for the first month and a half or so, I think there's 24 nicotine pouches in here. So I had about 48 pouches. And for the first 2 weeks, I just did one a day. I wanted to see how it would affect me and my mood. Then after the first 2 weeks, I started to do, like two. Like I'd have one mid-afternoon and then one in the evening. And I really started to experiment with it a little bit more and wanted to see like how it would affect me. After that, I took about a month break. And honestly, I didn't care that I didn't have it at all. Again, I don't know if it's just with me and my genes, but if I just tell myself I'm not going to do something or I don't buy it or I don't have it in the house, I don't do it. But after giving it about a month break, I bought 2 more tins and I was like, all right, let's push it a little bit more. I started doing 2 at a time. So I'd be getting about 8 milligrams in one dose. And then sometimes I do 2, 3, 4 doses a day just to see how it would go. And honestly, as we'll get to here, I've seen a very interesting effect on my productivity. Nicotine is a stimulant, and I'm not here to go into the science of all this stuff. I'm just here to share my experiences overall. But as I mentioned, I have a very creative job and business in what I do. And I found it can really help extend the work that I'm doing. When I start to get burned out or feel like, I've been in front of the computer for 10 hours, or maybe I've been working for 5 hours, go to the gym, come back, work for another 3 or 4 hours, you just start to hit this level and this point where you're just like, I'm kind of done with the day. Even though I could sit here for another 3 or 4 hours and just push through it, mentally, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to. But once I started experimenting with these and I found it got adapted, like I was used to it, I wasn't feeling like nauseous or anything from it, I really found that I could push and I could go longer. I could do 12, 14, sometimes 16-hour days and feel great throughout it. So in general, like high level, I think this is great for productivity. I think it depends on your job and what you're doing, but I really think that like if you are not in the same situation like me, like where you don't get addicted to stuff and you can test this out and stop, I think this can be very beneficial for productivity, especially like monotonous, tedious work. So let's take a quick pause here because now I've had this in my lip for about 15 minutes and I'm really starting to get a nice head buzz going. I'm really like, I almost want to kind of lean back and sit a little bit, but I'm still feeling very like euphoric. I feel like very in tuned with what I'm doing and what I'm saying. I'm not trying to push this in any way. I'm not incentivized to discuss this thing. Again, I'm just here to share my unfiltered experience with it. But right now I'm feeling like quite lightheaded. It feels really good after 7 days of not having this. But honestly, if I wasn't recording this video right now, like I'd be like enthralled in my work, enthralled in what I'm doing. I feel like an extra little boost to my mood, even though I'm feeling kind of like euphoric and like lightheaded. I do feel like focused in a certain way. Now, I've heard people question like and ask me like, is it like Adderall? Now, I've never personally done Adderall before, but when I've described the effects to some of my friends and colleagues and my clients and said like, guys, I'm not trying to push this on you in any way, but like maybe you should test this out and see how it works. Because my clients are entrepreneurs and business owners, and they're like me. They're grinding 10, 12, 14-hour long days. And I told them, like, man, this might be beneficial to you. Like, I really think you should question doing it and trying it and see what it's like for you. But they said, like, dude, everything you're describing sounds like it's kind of like Adderall in a way. Now, again, I've never tried Adderall before. I might experiment with it in the future, but yeah, that's all I can really share on that side of things. But let's go into addiction. So if you guys haven't already kind of heard, if you're just skipping to this part in the video, I really don't feel addicted to this stuff at all. As I mentioned from the beginning, like it's been 7 days since I had this. If I really wanted to, I could have ran off to the store to go buy this. Here in Canada, as I mentioned, they banned it and then brought it back, but they only have it at certain pharmacies that you can get it here in Canada. It's not like cigarettes where you can just go buy it from your local convenience store. So there is a pharmacy on my way to the gym where I do buy these, but the last week or so, just with new clients that I brought on, I haven't been able to get to the gym till like 6 or 7 p.m. at night. Usually the pharmacy's been closed by that point, but I've never felt like, oh God, like I'm tweaking, like I need this thing. I need a nicotine pouch. The last 7 days, I've just been like, fuck, it'd be nice to pop a Zyn right now and do a couple extra hours grinding on the computer. I just push through it for the most part, but it's not something where I'm like, I feel like I need it in my life. It feels like something that I can utilize to benefit my workload and my productivity. So again, I don't know if I just don't have the like certain addiction uh, gene or whatever it's called, but I personally don't feel addicted to these things. And from the research that I've done and seen online is that like all that's in it is nicotine and whatever little flavoring there is to it. So I've heard a lot of people also question like, you're going to get mouth cancer and stuff like this. Like, I think you have a lot better chance of getting mouth cancer from the chewing tobacco or from smoking cigarettes. But from this, like, honestly, I got a nice little minty taste in my mouth and I feel good. Like I feel great. And if you guys haven't seen recently, Robert F. Kennedy actually popped a Zinni in during one of his, I think he was on a council meeting or something. And I think in certain ways, like it can really be beneficial. And again, I don't seem to be addicted to this in any type of a way. I only see it as like a stimulant or a supplement that I can utilize to enhance and benefit my life. Now, one thing that I do want to discuss before we wrap up this video here and that I've noticed for myself is that when I take this, if you guys know me at all, like I'm a very big intermittent faster. I will typically go to the gym fasted, typically around the, 12 and a half, 14-hour range is when I'm getting to the gym fasted. And then I'm not eating till 16 to 18 hours fasted. And then there's some days, for instance, like if I'm going on a client video shoot and I have to drive somewhere, that I just won't eat till I get home at night. And it'll be like 9, 10 p.m. And then I'll just smash enough food and calories to get my macros in. But what I have noticed is that I feel like it affects my gut. When I take this when I'm fasted, like right now, as I mentioned, I just smashed 2 burritos and I don't feel or notice anything right now. But what I have noticed is that when I take this, when I'm in a fasted state, I feel like it's activating my stomach. So one thing that I've heard, and I've completely avoided it, but if you chew gum while you're fasting, essentially you're not fasting because your saliva is activating your digestive system because it thinks it's getting food in. And because you're chewing on this thing, you're actually swallowing the saliva. And although there's no calories in it, your stomach is getting activated. And again, I've completely avoided chewing gum ever since I started intermittent fasting about like 15 years ago. But what I do notice is that if I take this like in the morning or in the afternoon and I'm still fasted, my stomach is activated. It starts growling. And then I need to go to the bathroom within about 10 to 15 minutes. And when I'm saying I got to go to the bathroom, it's not to do number 1, it's to do number 2. So I think it's actually activating and affecting my fast. Now, I haven't really noticed it in any kind of a way in regards to like my energy levels or my mood and how it changes in that sense. But I do question if this is activating my stomach and affecting my fast. So I think that's just one thing to call question to. But overall, that's my unfiltered experiences here with taking Zyns or Zonic. I do feel like this is just like a supplement like coffee. It's an energy booster. It's a stimulant. It's something that I'm not addicted to. I could just stop it for a week or a month and not have a problem with. But I definitely noticed that it increases my level of productivity. And I'm going to continue utilizing this because I think it's beneficial for the current stage I'm at in my life here. I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. And when I want to grind, I can grind on it. There's been some times at night where, I just got so much going on in my head. I'll go to bed at like 9:30, and then I just wake up at 2 in the morning. Whether I'm on these Zyns or not on the Zyns, like I'm taking a month break. And it's 2 a.m. and my brain's just running. And I'm like, all right, I can't go back to sleep. Let's grind. Let's crank out 6 hours worth of work before everyone else wakes up. And I'll brew up a nice French press full of coffee, like 2.5 cups of coffee, and I'll just grind and work. But I've noticed that when I am on Zyns and I'm doing that 2 a.m. kind of grind, I brew up a nice French press of coffee, I pop 2 Zyns in, and I can just be in this incredible flow state and just crank out work. So that's my experiences with Zyn, not trying to push it on you in any way whatsoever, but I wanted to share this here because this is definitely a new experiment, and I wouldn't call it life-changing, but man, I really like these, and I'm going to continue experimenting with it for the next little bit at least. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you got value from this video, you know what to do. Smash the like button, leave me a comment, or whatever the hell you want to do, and I'll see you in the next video. I am the Hungarian Experiment.